Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open the meeting, bring the meeting to order. And I'm gonna start with a motion to go into non-public session. If I can get a second?
Second. Gotta read it, don't we?
Yeah, okay. I know. Let me get to the right one, okay? Non-public session per NHRSA 91A:3 to B and C. Roll call vote, Selectman Bugby,
Yes.
Selectman Forrest.
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes. For the audience, we're gonna be in there a while, just so you know. We have some business that we need to take care of. Make yourself at home. And we'll be out as soon as we can. New Hampshire or something like that?
That's the one.
Okay. I read it.
Back in public.
Oh, let me get back in.
Do you want to seal the bid?
I don't know, do we need to see the minutes?
Yes, we do.
Okay. I move to seal, I'd like to make a motion, please. I move to seal the non-public minutes. Can I get a second?
No fun.
Roll call, Scott. Selectman Bugby. Selectman LaCourse.
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes. Carried. Let me get on there. All right, welcome, everybody. So, we're going to open for public comment. For those of you that would like to address the board, please raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Come to the podium. State your case. And you have 3 minutes to do it. So, who's first? Rolling along.
Jeez.
All right. Well, then we'll move on. Mary Ann Banks, cemetery trustee. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes, yeah.
Did I miss you?
I decided a little bit late.
Okay, fair enough.
All right.
Please.
There was a chance I couldn't come up for a future thing, but.
Absolutely.
I'm Matt Glode from Oyster River Youth Association. I just want to address a couple of comments from an earlier selectman meeting earlier in the month from the 13th related to the field usage fees that are being suggested for Little River Park and other town fields. At that meeting on the 13th, I believe Larry Kinberg was up, and he had brought up some comments that I had made when I originally suggested fee changes for the fields. And at the time that I presented the changes related, I brought up some suggestions of why I was changing them, and that they were related to some issues that I had had the previous year with some groups that utilized the facilities. And he brought that up and used the word that he felt that my increases related to unknown issues could be viewed as discriminatory, and I thought that that was relatively inappropriate use of a word without having full information about why changes were offered at the time. So related to groups benefiting from the structure that was in place at the time, it was offered at Little River Park, $35 per use. Stevens Field at the time had no fee at all. So there was an outside group that was originally founded as a local organization that merged with a for-profit organization called GPS Soccer. And they utilized Stevens Field for the duration of the season for no rentals to the town at all. My suggestions were fully based on my incorrect assumption that the fees generated from rentals went against maintenance and upkeep of the fields to the town. After the fact, Mr. Kimmer let me know that those actually go to the rotating fund for the Recreation Committee. Once I found that out, happy to support any changes that they feel are appropriate, because that money goes to them. I was unaware of that at the time. But when I made those suggestions, I was under the impression that any money generated was going back towards the maintenance. So a large part of my reasoning was to offer some fees that would realistically offset some of those maintenance costs for the town. None of that goes to ORWA. We're just kind of the schedulers for those facilities so that we can ensure that the community members that we serve have access to those first and foremost. Another thing that went on that I felt was kind of inappropriate or other clubs could benefit from was it was defined as per use. And that's a really broad definition. So if any group came in and wanted to utilize the fields for an entire day, that would be $35. When I was looking at it as going towards offset of maintenance, I felt that wouldn't be an equitable exchange of rate for amount of use and wear and tear that went on the fields, which is why I suggested more of an hourly rate. The other issue that was discussed was based on feeling that the rate I suggested was inappropriate based on in percent increase. I felt that it's better to look at what the field might actually be worth rather than what you're charging now compared to what you're charging at another time. And I had supplied a good handful of comparable field rates around the area. So I chose to look at it that way instead of a percent increase.
I hate to step on you,
Sure.
but we are up against,
No problem.
do you kind of have a bottom line as to what you were going to suggest?
Those are my main points. The only
You know that
other,
we have Mr. Kinberg that's going to talk about rates a little bit later on the agenda?
yep, I only got 2 minimal comments on those.
Okay, fine.
Again, I'm happy to support what they want since it goes to them. My only suggestion is their last one, baseball game, $25 per hour. Why is that per hour? And the other ones are per game. Just, it would be easier for me to schedule if they were equal, one or the other. And then Stevens Field and Town Field are still labeled as per event. It would be more helpful if they were by hour. Or
You're
something
welcome
like
to stay and sit through that conversation
Sure.
and join in fact.
Sure, sounds good. Appreciate it.
Place for comment. Okay.
Thank you.
So, Mary Ann Banks.
Mary Ann Banks, 36 Carpenter Lane, Lee. I am the Cemetery Trustee Chair. My term expires 2020. This evening I will be addressing the position in discussion as sexton, as indicated in the RSA 289-7, number 2, and not as listed on the agenda or previous correspondence. Because of his resignation as sexton, the cemetery trustees would like to publicly thank Randy Stevens for the many years that he has served the town of Lee in this position. He will be greatly missed. Randy has worked closely with the cemetery trustees as sexton to carry out the many duties needed to maintain town cemeteries that have established trust funds. When burials take place, Randy oversees the location of the proper grave site. Randy also oversees digging, burials, laying of the stones, foundations, and erecting of monuments. He communicates with funeral directors, family, clergy, and collects information needed to maintain the records of burials. He helps the cemetery trustees to keep the rules and regulations and price lists updated. We thank you, Randy, for your many years of service. And as cemetery trustees, we recognize that it is our responsibility to appoint a new sexton who is not a trustee to carry out these duties. We are moving forward with this appointment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, fair enough. We'll move on. Mr. Kinberg.
You want to sit?
Good evening.
Last meeting, you charged the rec commission to come up with a new fee structure, recommended fee structure for Little River, or not just for Little River Park, but for the field usage, which I passed on to you folks. Hopefully you have a copy of. We went back and forth a lot on this with emails with the other members and with Pat Claude, and trying to come up with an equitable fee structure. And basically what we came up with was the practice for any field, $25 per hour per practice. Soccer games half field, $20 per game, multi-purpose field. Soccer game full field, $35 per game, multi-purpose field. Baseball practice, $25 per hour per practice. Baseball game, $25 an hour played. Stevens Field, you folks had already approved the $20 per event on July 30th. And the Mast Way Field, we felt that $20 an hour would be appropriate for that. So that's our recommendation at this point.
I have a couple of questions. I noticed that it's, I want to follow through with just spoken about how come the discrimination between the baseball and soccer? Why don't they all the same, basically? And one's $25 per hour per practice, I got that. And the baseball game is $25 per hour played. So why not soccer game, half field, $25 per hour played?
Well, I think that was a fee that was come up with, basically. I think Annette, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I would.
You did the research on it, so.
Just a little more information, please.
Do you need Annette Brown or Lady Thornley? Hello, gentlemen. Matt and gentlemen. Matt came to our meeting and asked us to make, I thought he asked us to make the soccer games per game, not per hour, but practices per hour. So we were trying to accommodate his question. The soccer game on the big field lasts about an hour and a half. But a baseball game lasts 2.5 or 3 hours. So we couldn't see that charging $35 for a 2 to 3 hour game of baseball was in any way equitable. So that's what our thoughts were. Now, if it's easier for ORYA, I really don't want to keep this can down the road anymore. But those were our thoughts. We would have preferred a straight out hourly rate. But we thought we were accommodating ORYA by doing it that way.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please.
At that meeting, I had tried to do my best to steer them towards the questions they would need to answer. I don't recall necessarily pushing in one direction or the other, but giving advice on what it would mean per hour or per game. So there are pros and cons of either way that you look at it. Usually go with one or the other. It's okay to do one or the other and let them make the decisions. I don't want to make decisions for them with the money that's going to their fund. The one thing I would, when looking at this one last time, I just got this today or yesterday, and Larry might help define this. Currently, the practice field, as stated, says $25 per hour per practice. So, as an example, that's a big field. A lot of time there are youth practices that go across the field. So more than one team can be using it for practice at the same time. So is that per team practicing, or is that for the field? So that's just where I would have to total up the amounts. If they were per practice, just makes it a little confusing for me.
I feel like a jack in the box now.
Maybe you better stay up there.
Actually, we thought that you would be scheduling the practices, and you could schedule them however you want. We're just trying to make this as simple as possible. If you practice 4 people on that team, and one of them is maximum velocity, then he pays $25 an hour. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, usually when those requests come in, so for example, I received requests for Little River Park earlier in the year from MV, and they asked for, as an example, Fridays from 5 to 7 at Little River Park. So they could have 2 teams practicing each hour. They could have 4 teams practicing each hour. And for me, that information that I receive isn't enough as it is written here. So if it's per hour per practice, for me, that would relate to per hour per team, because it's 1 practice per team.
No, we discussed that at the meeting. Maybe you had left by then, but I also contacted other recreation directors in towns, and they didn't see a problem with having several teams practice together at the same time. So,
So if you like add an asterisk below here and you write per practice is defined as, I'd be fine with that. That way I can easily determine what that
well,
is.
you're probably going to have to find this because you're going to be scheduling it.
Correct, yeah.
So.
And again, when rentals come, they usually just request space and hours. You know, I need a full field or a half field for this number of hours.
Okay.
So that, if we just define per practice, that might make that a little bit easier, that's all. Unless you know what that is right now and.
I thought that's what it said. I'm
But that's
sorry.
what we're doing.
I'm not understanding you evidently.
So I'll try to reiterate one more time, or say it as clearly as I can. A group right now wants to utilize the field as an example, Fridays from 5 to 7.
Right.
That is just field and hour. Within that, they might have 6 practices.
No, I understand.
So do I charge per hour, or do I charge per hour per team practicing?
Per hour.
Okay, so I would suggest just eliminating per practice, and that solves it.
Okay.
That makes it easy for
I
the
understand.
scheduling.
But you get to determine the size of space they could practice on.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're going to summarize this on a piece of paper again, so the wording's, so we know what we're dealing with wording-wise.
We would really like to
That's
wrap
all I
this up
ask.
tonight so they can start practicing and playing.
So I would just suggest what you have, delete per practice. And, you know, unless you wanted to make any
Okay,
changes
no,
relevant to the questions you asked prior, I would be okay with that. Is
So
that
it's
So-
just,
so
it's just
John-
the
just delete per
per
practice,
practice.
delete per
John, do you
practice?
understand our reasoning behind the
I
games
understand the
in
reason.
soccer and the
I'm just trying to
games
get the words to flow properly.
in baseball?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The one I'm still stuck on is per game. I'd like to see that per hour played.
Again, in soccer, we thought we were,
Well, it matches with baseball. I mean,
well, I
baseball,
understand,
soccer,
but
it's all the same
we
sport.
thought for scheduling that Matt would see that it was a U13 game and he would just slot in $35.
There are some benefits to this approach because each age group of a soccer game anyway is a set amount of time. You know, a youth half-field game, it's going to be about an hour. For the other one, it's going to be about an hour and a half. So I know that the only caveats would come in if it was lacrosse or other things, that's all.
And there's nobody but you playing lacrosse.
Right now.
Well, I don't think there will be.
So Larry, can you give me the reading?
So we
Fix it on the
changed,
spot.
we changed the practice any field, $25 per hour, and strike per practice.
Okay.
The next 2 items would stay the same. Under baseball practice, $25 per hour, strike per practice.
Okay. So what about baseball game, $25 per hour? Why is the played on there? Nobody else is played. I'm just curious. I don't,
Change that too.
it's $24 per hour, right?
Okay, we can do
Yeah,
that too.
make it all the same.
Okay.
And then the other two are pretty straightforward.
Yep.
And Matt, you're all good with that?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay.
So the last item, baseball game, $25 per hour, period.
Yes.
Okay.
And what's the difference between the town field and Stevens Field? Why is it different? One's by hour and one's by event. And I know we set the event, but.
Well, you said the Stevens Field per event, that was,
But what about the town field? Why is that $20 per hour? It doesn't
we
even
felt that
matter.
that was consistent with the quality of the field.
Who has to administer this? Is this Matt?
Well,
Who administers this?
ORYA does the scheduling,
Who's the one that does the billing?
ORYA.
Okay. Do you understand this?
I do. I mentioned in my public comments, per event still leaves it open for interpretation. You know, that's an hour or that's 8 hours. So that's, you know, I can figure it out, but it still leaves it open.
Specifically for the Stevens Field one?
Yeah, yeah. But that one, I believe he had left where it was just previously approved by the select board.
Yeah, we were just leaving the town field consistent with Stevens, that's all.
Well, it's not consistent because it's per event in Stevens and Townfield per hour. I would like to see. the
Stevens is
Townfield
per
change.
event, $20.
Correct.
Yeah, but Townfield is per hour.
I'm sorry, you're right. Per
So,
event, $20 per hour.
I'd feel better if we could change Stevens Field to be the same as, excuse me, Townfield to be the same as Stevens Field. Then it's just consistent.
Okay, so just $20 per event.
Per event.
Okay, so we strike per hour.
We actually, in the previous meeting where we decided on, the board decided on Stevens Field, we defined event as date. So somebody could use the field for 12 hours
Mhm.
and it would be $20.
There's a kicker for you.
Well, the thing is, these are.
Can I speak again?
These are in effect now, so it doesn't mean we can't change them in the future, so.
Well, the season's almost over anyway for the use of these fields. My suggestion is.
So the thing is, I'm not saying this is what it's gonna be for perpetuity. If we
No,
find something
this
that's not
is
working.
the use fee schedule for now, effective for the remainder of 2018. So come spring, we come up with a new fee schedule if we need to do that.
If warranted.
We just finish out this season with this schedule so that groups can plan their events.
Okay.
May I make a comment about Stevens Field? It was free last year, so from the treasurer's standpoint, any money is gravy. So, and for the town field, any records that I've looked at, that has never been rented. So it's almost a moot point whether we charge anything or not. If you would rather just take it off the list, that's fine. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that without checking with the other members, but it's just,
Okay.
sorry, Larry.
That's fine.
Good the way it's been restated.
Okay.
Either way. Didn't fill it in.
Well, we did it on here, I don't.
I'm just going to move to establish fees for using Little River Park playing fields effective August 28th, utilizing the fee schedule as presented by the rec commission at the meeting. Modified. Further comment? Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You said Little River Park, right?
That's all that was on the, yeah, then I said I'm sorry, town field was at the bottom, I didn't see it.
So you want to
But,
do
but it's on the schedule, I said the fee schedule. So they're all listed on the fee schedule,
Okay,
okay?
good.
May I mention two other items while I'm
Please.
here with Rec
Sure.
Commission? The Rec Commission has decided to drop the movie nights because of very poor attendance. We found that that's not a program that's working, so just to advise you that we decided to do that. We're going to put more effort into the music in the park, which has turned out to be a very good hit. One of the things with that is a recommendation that we'd like to make to put in some lighting in the pavilion. Because as we move this later in the season, it gets darker earlier. So by 8 o'clock, it's getting pretty dark in the pavilion. So I'd like the select board to consider putting some lights, possibly LED lights, in there so that we can hold those events. So, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pat Jenkins, Heritage Commission Chair, Town Historian. Good evening.
Tricia Jenkins, Heritage Commission. I'm here happily tonight. It seems as though for quite some time now, we have been saying, Randy Stevens is leaving. We don't want to see Randy Stevens leave. We like what he's been doing. Oh dear, he's not going to do it anymore. Tonight, the Heritage Commission would like to propose that we have Randy Stevens as our town historian. And that brings him back to us, I hope. He has agreed to this. We have not had a town historian for a while. The first one was Renata Dodge, and the second was Dick Wellington, and of course we lost both. So now Randy Stevens' turn to step into the spot, and I think he'll do a great job.
So you have already talked to him about it, and he has
I
said?
have already talked with him about it, yes, I have. Mhm. So that's the proposal from the Heritage Commission.
Questions?
I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's well substantiated. He's already written historical books about the town.
I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea. So we have to formalize that somehow, or?
I don't think so.
No? Okay. All
It's
right.
not a statutory position, it's.
Thank you very much.
So we just agree that Randy Stevens can be the town historian.
Hey.
Wonderful,
deal.
thank you.
Karen Rossi, Lee Fair Committee Representative Extraordinaire.
Good evening. So,
Could I interrupt you, sir? Can we ask her where her tiara is? Because she's supposed to wear it at all public.
this is,
I'm sorry?
Her tiara, she's supposed to wear it at all public functions.
it didn't match my
Oh, the
outfit.
tiara. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about that.
I'm trying to.
I didn't realize there was a list of commandments that went along with that.
Oh,
I don't do commandments.
Not well, anyway.
So I'm here tonight to see if the board would approve the purchase of some picnic tables and some benches for Little River Park. We're using it more, which is fantastic, but there's not a lot of seating down there. When we were at the ice cream social, we looked around and noticed that all the picnic tables were full, so at the fair meeting last week, we talked about it would be nice to purchase some more, but the fair committee would like to help out, but doesn't want to pay the whole burden because it's only used once a year. So we contacted Ricky Stevens, who agreed to make picnic tables for $250 a piece and benches for $75 a piece. So,
$400 a table set then.
nope, because the table comes with 2 benches.
Oh,
These are standalone benches, so it would be,
okay.
and they're 8-foot picnic tables and 6-foot benches.
Yeah, I believe that's
And 6-foot benches. And I spoke with Larry Kinberg to see if the rec commission would be interested in splitting it. And you guys are the keepers of the operating budget, it's my understanding.
And how many tables would you like to get?
Well, 4 for now and 6 benches for a total of $1,450. So the fair committee would pay for half if we had to.
Well,
So, or the rec
Fair
commission.
committee would
if they
If we can twist the rec commission's arm into paying it all, that'd be great too. But Larry had mentioned today that there's other expenses to come out of that line item, so he wanted to make sure that he had plenty of money for the events that they need.
I see.
Right?
So, Mr.
I don't want to throw him under the bus at all.
Oh, why not?
Well, maybe a little.
After going over the finances, I did not check with our treasurer because I didn't have time to do that, but the finances look fine. I don't see any issue with the rec commission participating in this.
So let's split 50.
No,
I'm sorry,
That was
what
our
is
deal,
it,
50%.
what is it the rec commission is committing to here?
50% of the cost.
50% of the cost?
50% of the cost was the agreement that Karen and I had at the time we spoke, but it sounds like it's changing.
Well, you don't know unless you ask.
Where's that bus? Is it a big bus?
No, we're fine with paying for half.
So that's $725.
Correct. Yep, so $725 from the fair committee and $725 from
Is it the recreation operating fund or is it the revolving fund?
No, operating.
Why wouldn't it come from the revolving fund? Because that's, we're putting money into there for.
Because, it's my understanding, and maybe the town administrator can step in and help, the fund that you board has control over is the operating fund,
Yeah,
Yes.
and the rec commission would need to meet and vote to spend out of the other fund, and they're not gonna meet between now and the fair.
Oh.
Right?
No, we meet next Tuesday.
Oh.
However, the revolving fund is getting a little thin. And the money for the music has been coming out of the revolving fund, which is gonna run it down very, very lean. And we don't have a lot of revenue coming in, so I don't see where we have that $700 in the revolving fund to do that.
The revolving fund currently has $2,970.
And we still have some bills to pay, as I understand it, for the music.
I know we've paid some of the concert bills, I don't know how many there are left.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'd have to check on that. But there's not a lot of revenue coming into the revolving fund to replace that at this point. So I don't know that we would have it out of that.
It's fine.
Larry,
Annette?
it's gonna be below $2,000, well below that, when we pay all of the music fee, oh, sorry. It says $2,900, I checked that today, and that is correct. But there's some things that have not come out of that yet. Some gifts for people who have helped us. There's also some music bills to be paid. None of the August bills have been paid yet.
It's okay. I'm good.
So I make a motion to approve the purchase of picnic tables and benches for Little River Park in the amount not to exceed $1,450. Funding to come 50% from the Lee Fair Committee and 50% from the Recreation operating budget.
Second.
can I ask you a question? What's he making this out of? Wood-wise, I understand wood, but is it pressure treated? What is it?
I don't, no, it's not pressure treated, it's whatever he has there. I would assume I think it's 2 or 3 inch pine.
So are we gonna put something on it so it lasts?
Yes,
For
we'll
a
seal
while?
them, we'll seal them up.
So you're gonna cover the expense of doing that? Or-
Yes.
That was a hesitant yes.
My husband's a painter.
It's a gallon of
Okay, all right.
Voluntary, but
And
I
during
love it.
winter time, where do we put those?
Under the pavilion.
you stack them like that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Julie Glover, Town Administrator, FY20 budget.
You may recall the previous meeting, we talked a little bit about budget guidelines, and the board wanted to have some time to think about it and then talk about it again tonight. So I put some information together at the request of Selectman Force, so that's the information that you see in the packet. First is relative to what Social Security is anticipating for upcoming COLA increases. Theirs are tied to cost of living adjustments, the federal cost of living CPI. So we typically look to that to determine whether or not the town wants to offer a COLA. So that's that information. And then in general, the board was just going to possibly discuss whether you wanted to give any instructions to department heads relative to you don't want to see any increases, you want to see decreases, you don't want to see more than 2%, 3%, or just let the departments turn their budgets in.
What have we done in the past with COLA?
This being different, every year it's been different. Yeah. I looked up the New England information from the Department of Labor Statistics, and the Boston, Cambridge, Newton is 3.4% so far. So it's a little bit higher than this, So I think if we put in something in the middle, maybe, that would be appropriate. In regards to the other questions, in terms of budget suggestions, I think we can just ask them to put in what they think, and then we'll go from there. That's just my thoughts.
No, I agree. I think we should let them, I mean, we need to find out from their mind what their requirements are.
You know, I'm in
And
agreement.
that's what we work against, and if we can get to their requirements, great. If not, then that's what the budget process is all about. So I agree with that.
So what COLA are you thinking, Scott?
Maybe
Well, in terms
1.7?
of the information that Julie pulled, it's 2.4 to 3, depending on, and the labor statistics is 3.4, so if we did 3, maybe? And this is just a guideline, we can
I think we
change
could
it,
work
tweak it as
against
we
it
go along.
anyway, until we get numbers laid out.
Yeah,
Well, I'll just put 3% in as a
Yep.
placeholder
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
budget.
because this,
Exactly.
their numbers are through July,
Mm-hmm.
so we've got a few months to go. So maybe in December, when we're finalizing everything, we'll take another look.
3% for that.
3%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Agree, let's let the department head roll.
Budget meeting schedules, last year, the board met with the ABC on Thursdays. I don't know whether you want to keep that date. I know that the ABC has its kickoff meeting on September 11th, so I don't know whether there's been any discussion among that group as to what day. I just know last year it was Thursday.
Thursday is fine with me, as long as there's no planning board meeting.
It's fine with me. Thursday's fine.
Are there any other days? Just to let you know, Tuesday is the only day that all those people can meet that's on the ABC.
Okay, Tuesday's fine with me also,
So
so.
Tuesdays,
Excuse me, can I butt in for a second? I just want to remind you guys that Thursday night's a very busy night in this building with planning board and fire training. We often struggle on Thursday nights for meeting space.
Okay,
Sorry.
well, for me, Tuesdays are okay.
Tuesdays are fine with me,
so let's go with,
as long as they're not before 6 o'clock.
and I'll just check with them, because when we meet on the 11th, I'll just suggest for Tuesdays, because Thursdays, everybody can make except one person. And then the other nights, well, Mondays we can't,
Or you can't, that's correct.
because we're already doing something.
Has the ABC formed? I mean, do we know who's on it?
Yep,
Who is on it?
yes.
You?
Yes. Oh, you want names?
Names,
Yeah.
names.
Pat Barber's on
Yeah.
it. Rebecca Hawthorne's on it. Tom Murdoch's on it.
Yeah.
I'm spacing the last one. I'm on it.
Brian Burke.
Brian Burke. yes.
Alice?
Excuse me?
Alice McKinnon?
Oh, Alice McKinnon too. Yes, sorry.
Good. Good.
So Tuesday night would be good,
Tuesday. So I will tell them Tuesday.
6 and after.
Oh, that's right. What's the earliest you can get here? They usually meet at 7, is that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, 7's fine.
Tuesday, 7 p.m. Okay.
Okay.
No, but TCVC.
Don't you like Tuesdays?
Tuesday's a difficult night here too, but
They're all difficult, unless we're gonna do one on Friday night, which I
Mondays
wouldn't
and
recommend.
Wednesdays are better, but Mondays are this night. Wednesday.
Well, almost every night has an issue attached to it somewhere, so.
That's true.
John?
Is Scott forgetting TCVC Tuesdays, or?
We're gonna have to schedule around. The ABC doesn't meet every single week. See, they usually get Thanksgiving off, they get
Okay.
Christmas off, of course, they get holidays. But yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to struggle with, to see, so,
You have to struggle with it.
yeah.
And then the last information that Selectman LaCourse asked me to put together was just some historical information on other facilities that the town has voted on. That's the other piece of the information, along with the bond schedule for the transfer station and the safety complex.
The reason I asked for that is that last time I was asked how much you think the bond should be at this point. And of course, the bond that did not pass was what, 2,600,000?
Oh, for the,
Yeah,
the,
the bond.
it was
2,516,000.
That was the total
2.6.
cost, the bond was 1.3.
Yeah, the project cost was
Yeah,
two.
I got you. You should have a copy.
This is something that John Tappan created, and if it's okay with you, can we ask him to come to the podium and
Absolutely.
John Tappan, a member of the TCVC. At the last meeting, you asked about what would the cost of this project be, what would the effect be on tax rate and on the tax costs for median household or median house. And so this is a chart of annual bond payments for the median house price, which 2018 is $229,500. This shows the public safety complex bond and the amounts for that, the transfer station bond, and the town center project. And this is for $2.67 million, which is higher than the number you've seen before. It's higher than what was presented at the deliberative session when it was 2.25. But at the deliberative session, for the funding sources that were listed, there was $422,000 unidentified source. So I took that 422,000, rounded it to 420, and added it to the 2.25 million that was previously presented, and that's where the 2.67 million comes from. The June 2018 bond that New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank just gave came in for 20 years at 3.24%. So that's where the 4% prediction comes from. All of these numbers that are shown, the median house price, the bond amount, the percent, the term, the taxable value, all of those are live numbers. So I'm really presenting this as a tool that if you wanted to see, well, what if the bond was X, or what if the percent was Y, that's easy to do. The other thing that may not be obvious, that taxable valuation, that is the 2018 valuation, and this is showing it at a 1% annual increase. So that's saying that this is what would result if the median house value stayed the same and the total taxable valuation went up at 1% per year. Obviously, that doesn't make much of a difference in the early years. If you took out that 1%, that $117 largest cost would be $119. In the last year, it makes it a bigger difference. Instead of $54, that would be $66. So, any questions or anything else you'd like to see? Obviously, these numbers are not accurate to the $10,000 or $20,000 level. I did go back and look at where did all this come from, where were the other sources, and some of them have changed. I got to change it $13,000 here and $2,000 there, and so forth.
No questions. Okay,
Thank you, John.
thank you.
Is there any information that you can think of that you want for any future meeting, or are we good for now, or?
Well, we still have the discussion in terms of what the board supports, so we can tell
Yeah.
without addressing what we're thinking the total project cost should be. But this gives you an idea in terms of what the impact of the tax rate is going to be on the $3.4 million with a $2.67 million bond.
Well, the 2.6 come from what was a bond from before, right?
It was based on
Just
using
the
money
library.
from the library capital reserve fund, using some money from the town buildings
Right.
trust fund, using no money from the unassigned fund balance.
Correct.
That was one of the options of where to get the 400,000, 422,000 that we're talking about. So he just rolled it into the bond, but it gives you an idea. Sorry.
Do you want those numbers?
No, but I don't need it specifically, thank you, John.
Well, the total?
But it's basically, that was the library, at this point, we're talking about a new town hall and a modified library with additions.
It's
And-
smaller than before, but yes.
Yeah.
It's only 6,500 square feet gross.
Growth?
Yes.
Gross.
Yes.
So
Gross.
there's been a discussion with the trustees in terms of gross versus net. But the number is gross.
Are we still in the path? I just want to bring the discussion back. In phases, or is it one fell swoop?
Right at the moment, it's all at once. That's something that I talked about last time in terms of, because we have to give them some kind of instruction, we have to give the TCVC some kind of instruction when we're working with the Valley for a singer in terms of how we're going to proceed with this. Right at the moment, it's all at once, all of it together.
Can we ask them to develop 2 plans?
I don't know if the RFP allows that, we're gonna have to incur a cost for that, I would think.
Because I'm trying to get a sense of, get a feeling of how much the Board of Selectmen should push, the amount of money that we think it should go for. Last time, the 2.6, wasn't 2.6, but it was 2.25 did make it. It wasn't even a close vote at that point.
That was for just the library.
Yeah, it was just the library itself, yeah. And I just wanted, can we hedge our bet and push 2 things forward and push that, but talk about the whole thing as a package?
In terms of putting 2 different things on the warrant, or what do
You know,
you?
put the library and the town hall together
Yeah.
is the major push at this point, knowing we're gonna do the rest immediately following, but split the bonds, take that as the first bond run.
Well, those are your 2 big chunks.
Yeah, I know.
I think you need to know what the worst case is before you put a number up there and then have to change the number to a worst case number. I think that people are very sensitive to seeing that number move around too much.
Well, in terms of the total project cost?
Yeah.
It's still, well, unless we tell them otherwise, it's still 3.4. That's what it was before.
Yeah, but that's a number.
Well, no.
I mean, you don't have anything firm right now that says that's what it
Well,
is, that's all I'm saying.
That's the thing, you can take a couple of tacks with that. You can say, okay, this is what we want. We want a 5,000 square foot municipal office and a 6,500 gross square footage in terms of the library. How much does that cost?
Yeah.
Or you can go the other thing, we have $3.4 million, what can we get? So I think the TCVC needs some instructions on how to proceed.
But
with
don't you anticipate that as you start generating designs, et cetera, there's going to be some changes that are requested and made, et cetera, and that's gonna impact the cost?
Well, there's,
So then the number's gonna change, that's all I'm saying.
they're gonna have programmatic meetings.
It's gonna go up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess the way I would lean at this point is, I don't want to put a figure on there, I'd rather leave it as, we need so many square foot from the library, we need so much for the town
Right.
hall, and modification of the existing town hall.
You can
structure.
change the square footage numbers over time, but don't change that dollar amount once you publish.
But believing that the committee is gonna be out for the best interest in the town and not be palatial, they're gonna be trying to constrain, it to basically get function of the buildings for what we need it for.
So we will go for what our programmatic needs are,
Yes,
find out how much that is,
yeah,
and then come back and touch base with you.
exactly. Same way we're proceeding with the department heads in the last budget, we've got to let them come up with what they think they need and then defend
Yeah.
it, then we can always have that discussion.
Okay.
So we're following this, instead of saying target 3.2 or whatever number is, because at the same time, if it's 3.2, they're gonna bring, hell, I wrote contracts before, they said 10,000, you write $9,999.99. I mean, that's how contracts are done.
Okay.
So I hope that works. Are you in agreement?
No, I agree, yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll work through that process with them, and we meet with them tomorrow.
Good.
And then we'll go from there, we'll find out how much the dollar amount is, and if we have to cut, I don't think we'll be adding, but if we have to cut, we'll figure that out.
I understand.
But at least you have this information so you can have a general idea, and
I
John
appreciate that.
can use the tool to say, okay, well, now it's this, with these assumptions, this is much is gonna be impacting the taxpayer. Do you have any questions?
John?
If you recognize this, you.
If you're recommended.
Again, John Tappan, member of the TCVC. I think that we have already struggled with trying to keep costs in check. And I did look at the unit construction costs for 3 of the other La Valley projects, 3 libraries. And they range from $244 a square foot to $340 a square foot. We are talking about building buildings for $170 and $200. So I'm really worried when you say, ask for what you think you need, and then we'll see what the price will be. The previous committee went through that process and came up with $6 million. And that's...
Well, I'm asking the committee, and I trust you will follow through and to be conservative, know what we need for function versus form.
I think the position that I feel, or think that the position I think that I should be in, is one of trying to achieve a reasonable cost. And part of that is what is really reasonable for the town to pay. What is in line with the spending, the way that the town has looked at spending in the past, which has been pretty conservative. And the previous committees struggled greatly with how do you differentiate between needs and wants. And it turns out that many of the needs are, this is what we need in order to do what we want. I think that we need to have at least a starting price that we say, this is what we have in mind. And so this is the nature of the project. Because otherwise, I mean, we have talk about how energy efficient is it going to be, and alternative energy, and green spaces, and it just goes on and on and on. And we can grow this to any price anybody could possibly pay.
I think that you're asking the Board of Selectmen to come up with a figure, and we just don't have the background and knowledge to set a figure like that until we understand what the public wants can absorb. That's the more important aspect of it. So just to target a 3.2 or a 4.9, if knowing from the past history with respect to bonds, they'd probably say 2.6 and don't go any higher, but I don't want to do that. I think that's very limiting. I think if we're able to talk to the townspeople and build, convince them that we need a town hall that is it's chaste, but it functions properly. We don't have bells and whistles, but it'll do its job for many years in the future. And the library, a place we can go that's very comfortable, and won't have a lot of bells and whistles, but it's very functional. I think we can probably make that case. But for us to sit here and put like 3.2 or 2.6, it doesn't really mean anything at this point, because we just don't have the background to set those numbers.
Okay, well, maybe the words, not a lot of bells and whistles, is more like the input that we need. Or I think
Maybe that'll work.
Well, I think you have to wait until you meet with the architects and start generating some drawings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and get a feel for what it is.
That will give you the data as well. In terms of what-
Exactly.
So if we meet tomorrow and we say, our initial thing was 3.4 million and we want all this space, if they laugh us out of the room, that tells us something. And they say, try to work with that, we'll see what we can do.
Yeah.
But I think until we go through the process, because we have very good information in terms of what our programmatic needs are. So if we provide that to them and have them design something for us, because there's some iterative process in terms of, weeding things out. And just go with that, and we'll come back to you and say, okay, we've got the programmatic needs, this is how much they think it's gonna cost. and see where we go from
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It's kind of the
It
same
would be a
problem.
mistake to go out there with a number too early.
Yeah, I
It's the
just,
same
If
thing
the
we
number
did.
gets dynamic, you're in trouble.
The same thing with this building we did. This building was supposed to be like 12 feet farther that way, and we had to cut because we needed to save some money.
Yeah.
And we didn't do the second floor either.
Mhm.
So we got the bare bones, and unfortunately for us, moving the second floor was way cheaper than what they were gonna charge us to do it then. So, you know,
Okay.
so I think we have what we need.
I think you have it, at least the feelings will be in minutes. Right, Denise? Yes.
What?
So I'm just talking to,
Let's see, Julie Glover, Town Administrator, item 10.
If you don't mind, I think I'm going to talk about the recreation facilities, rules and regulations first, because I see there's a couple of people that are still here that may want to have input into that.
Okay.
This is just something that came up very recently with a requested use of the pavilion that made me look again at the regulations and realize that we probably want to add something there relative to signage. Because tonight, as a matter of fact, someone who's running for political office is using the pavilion. So I spoke with Ms. Rossi about what we can, or what our zoning ordinance allows for signs and what it doesn't. And obviously, signs can't be put along the road, and signs can't be put in the park, either Little River Park or any of the parks, if they're going to be visible from the road. So we do allow people to put up banners. For example, a happy birthday banner is a sign, so that can be put up inside the pavilion, provided it's not visible from the road. So the language that I proposed for the rules and regulations are just to put in a very abbreviated version of what is in our zoning ordinance. So,
Okay.
and that looks good to me.
okay. So I just need you to
The other thing is,
vote on the new changes and then.
you still got to renumber this, Julie,
Yes.
about the carry in, carry out should be number 2.
Yeah, I don't know why it keeps doing
It
that.
didn't happen.
Larry?
Okay, we just got this as an attachment to the agenda for tonight, and I might remind the select board that back in March 13th meeting of 2017, the Rec Commission is supposed to have input on this. We've had no input on this at all. I don't think we have an issue with the signage thing, but there is an item under 4 that was added, including pickup. I don't know why that was added in there.
That was there, that's been in there from the last time we looked at it. The only thing that I added for this meeting was what was in red relative to signs.
Okay. Again, we had no knowledge that this was going on, and according to the select board minutes, we were supposed to be involved in this.
Okay, understand.
Thank you. But the language looks appropriate.
Again, just putting our zoning ordinance as a reminder.
Excuse me? Excuse me?
I will speak on the same thing. Is that all right?
Yes.
I'm a little bit confused. All of the items that were presented to you on 328 for the recreation facilities usage agreement are not in the same order or anything. And now we've got number 4, use of the Randy Stevens Pavilion at Little River Park is generally handled on a first-come, first-served basis, etc. But a new item that was not in the previous facilities is any use of the fields for organized games or practices, including pickup, shall be scheduled through the Oyster River Youth Association. That's just confusing to me. Are we telling people that they have to schedule pickup, basketball or something through Oyster River Youth Association?
Okay, again, we can certainly talk about this. That language is not new tonight. That was in the previous document that was presented and we talked about. And that went to the Recreation Commission. Secondly, to be honest, that was to address something that came up at a meeting relative to maximum velocity, suggesting that they could just go and use the facility as in a pickup sense, but in fact, it would actually be scheduled. But if you want to strike it, strike it.
May I make a suggestion? What's the timeliness of this change? Do we have to do it tonight?
Well, I mean, it's our zoning ordinance, so technically, we probably don't have to put it in here tonight because our zoning ordinance would take precedent over this. I just thought, given what had happened in our office last week, that it would be a good idea to make sure that it's in here so that the people that use the pavilion and the facility know what the zoning ordinance is relative to signs.
I understand the zoning, but we're not talking about zoning. We're talking about pickup.
May I make a suggestion that we table this for now, allow them, because they're meeting next week.
Yep.
Allow them to take a look at it and then come back to us at our next meeting with anything they want to tweak, change, or whatever.
Sure.
Would that be,
Sounds good to me.
Could I just make a brief comment, though?
Me too.
well, I don't know.
Yes.
I think there's some confusion over this pickup thing, because what was being proposed was not an organized program. It was simply a taxpayer that wanted to give back to the town by providing an opportunity for youth to get together on an informal basis and to help out the rec commission with regard to the music nights, to provide activities for the kids, for the parents to sit there and listen to the music, and the kids wanted to play some games. That's all that was about. So as far as any kind of scheduling like that or any, I just don't think that that's appropriate at this time, and we will look at it at our next meeting coming up on Tuesday, come back with a recommendation. Thank you.
If the rec commission doesn't have a problem with the zoning ordinance being referenced in the rec policy, I would like it to please adopt this tonight, because political signs and regular signs, as we all know with our history in town, is a can of worms in this town. And the sooner we can get that cross-referenced in the park policy, the better, because people don't go to the zoning regulations to look. They don't even think about that. They don't even care. So if it's in this policy, which they're gonna hopefully look at, it's just gonna make it much easier. All she's trying to do is simplify it.
As far as I,
And as far as them having input, they can have input, but the rules are the rules. I don't mean any harm. I mean, you can't change the zoning ordinance. It is what it is.
We weren't talking about the zoning.
I know you weren't. That's why I said if you don't have a problem with it.
No, we don't.
so,
That's how I started off, by saying if they don't have a problem with it.
You can
Yeah, exercise tonight.
everything but four
I
as a whole.
don't think we have an issue with the
Fine.
change, the signage change.
Looks good.
I don't think that's an issue. Okay.
all right, so let's approve this and let you go back and see. if you-
We'll deal with the other stuff. You guys deal with the signage.
All right, how's that?
So what we
Thank you.
can do is we can prove everything except for, we're gonna put a hold on number 4.
I know, it was approved, but that's okay.
Yeah, but we'll just go for a process. Mhm.
Sure. So,
How many steps you getting today, Larry?
Oh, I've exceeded my steps today. To make this simple, because we all like simple, okay?
We do like simple.
We do like simple. We want to address the park usage and stuff like that from the rec commission standpoint. That's not an issue. We don't need to do that tonight as far as, or right now, as far as item 4 or anything else. I know you want to deal with the signage thing. I think that that's okay. Leave this in place.
Good, so we'll pass
At this
it in
point,
general.
let us have some time to work on this for coming up for 2019. How's that?
Okay. you got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
Done. So let's make a motion, Susan. Thank you.
I want to know just exactly what it is we're approving now in everybody's
the only
mind.
change that I presented tonight was relative to signage.
But we should just approve it in general, just the whole
Okay,
thing.
so,
As presented.
so we're going to move to accept the signage as proposed by the town, the signage regulator, or what am I, the signage,
The change to number 5.
the change to number 5?
Yeah, if you want to read the change.
Okay, I don't know, what is the change to number
It's
five?
on your,
I don't have it.
Yeah, it's just move to accept the rules and
Yeah, the
regulations
whole
as
thing.
presented, the whole
The
thing.
whole thing.
Okay, move to accept the rules and regulations as presented.
Second. Good. Scott has it.
Motion passed.
Thank you.
I don't have any formal discussion because we discussed it already.
yeah, no discussion.
Good. And,
What about my vote? Don't you want my vote?
Vote.
no.
No.
Are
Are you voting no or not?
No.
I call the vote. Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
passes. If no vote is taken, is it just sits there and just
It
dies?
just sits there on the table.
It dies?
Yeah, it dies.
So,
Which one you, Larry
I'd be tweeting.
are we done, Julie, with that list?
No.
We're finished with the facilities rules. NHMA legislative policy process. This has been in the agenda packet, I think at least once before. The board tonight can do two things. We can discuss all of the various proposals presented by NHMA and decide one by one whether you want to support them or not. You could have already looked at this and decided you want to support them all, support none of them, and then decide who you want to be your representative as your voting delegate on September, I think it's September 10th.
Who was last time?
I think it was Mr. Bugby.
Mr. Bugbee. What do you think, Mr. Bugbee?
I'm willing to go again, but I think we should go through each of these, or we can do it on our own. But I think we need to go through them because if I'm gonna be voting, I need instructions in terms of how you as a group would like to vote on these. I'm not necessarily in favor of every single one of them personally, but we have another meeting on September 10th. That's
So,
before.
September 10th?
The conference is on the 14th.
So
Yes.
let's
So-
make a point that we all read it and come through with it.
So we'll just go through it and send you, or we can do it here too.
Or we can do
We'll
it,
do it at the next meeting.
Do
yeah,
it at the next meeting.
so maybe if you can come,
We'll go through them before that, but then at the next meeting, we'll say yay, nay, whatever.
the other thing we can do, if it's all right with this group, if you need any additional information, some of these I know about because I was on the group that did them, some of them I have no clue. So if you go through and we have questions on ones, specifically the ones that were floor policies, ones that came in after the process, maybe we could ask the town administrator to inquire from the Minnesota Association more information about it.
Okay.
So if we know if we want to support it or not.
Julie?
Yep.
All right.
Just do it next one. Do the whole thing.
Okay. And then we'll go over next meeting.
Sounds good.
All right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Can I interrupt for just a second? This couple is waiting for something to come up. No, it's next.
We hope it's next.
I hope it's
We hope it's
next.
I'm sorry, sir, what is it you,
No,
please?
we were here for a couple of reasons. One is the utility pole that we're hoping is next on Mill Thompson. Plus, our house doesn't have air conditioning, and this is a good show when it's AC, so we're very entertaining. Take
So you don't
it,
mind?
take it, no good, it's very
A
entertaining.
utility pole?
Thompson Mill
Yeah,
Road.
Thompson Mill Road.
Oh,
We could put it at the end so you get
So
more
you-
AC if
yeah.
you'd like. No? Okay.
Thank you for the invite, though.
Scott, you have to sign
No,
this?
no, no, you, just you.
I have
just
to
the
sign it?
chairman to sign it. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Which utility pole are we speaking of? Do we see?
Thompson Mill?
Thompson Mill Road. The board has talked about this, it's come up at least once. And the board rejected the original location because it was too close to the historic stone wall. So we asked the co-op to take a look at it again and decide to put it somewhere else, which they did. They finally put the stakes out there. We had an opportunity to go out and review the stakes. I know that the Conservation Commission doesn't have an issue with the new location. I believe the Heritage Commission is okay with the new location, provided that the stone wall is not disturbed while they're putting the pole in or any of the guide wires or cutting down any of the trees. So in addition to approving the location of the pole, we're also giving New Hampshire Electric Co-op a pole license and granting them an easement.
Yeah.
So,
I will concur, that's the biggest thing in terms of them not disturbing the ancient stone walls.
That's right.
Correct.
And there's a nice little opening them, so they should be able to do that.
Yeah. They moved it
Yep.
Yeah.
to the left as you're looking at the wall.
Okay, so I'd like to enter a motion. Move to grant New Hampshire Electric Co-op an easement to construct and maintain utility pole-related wires, cables, etc., to keep clear of all necessary trees, brush, etc., within 30 feet right-of-way to be located on Thompson Mill Road, map 18-13-000 per the approved location plan, provided that the pole and related wires will be located in such a way as to not disturb the large stones that form the wall. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Now you can have power.
Yeah, thank God, yeah. That's good.
When I stopped in to visit, I think it was your framer.
Yeah.
He didn't know who I was, and he started complaining about, yeah, they're dragging their feet. We're having to use generators, we don't have any power. And then I went to visit this place, and I came back and I talked with him some more and let him know who I was.
Yeah.
He was very nice after that. So
Thank you.
We do appreciate your help. Thank you.
enjoy the new place there. Looks
Thank
nice.
you.
Looks nice.
We're looking forward to it. Thank you. No, that's it. This is, now we have to go back to the heat. Thanks, Ken.
Back to the heat.
Are we on number 11?
Next item is election coverage for September 11th.
Oh, yes, election coverage.
What is it?
I'll take the first shift.
Oh, and I can't do it at all, right? Yeah, right? I can't do it at all.
Why is
No,
that?
because Mr. Busby will be on the ballot.
Oh, yeah, there we
I haven't
So-
seen any signs up or anything. This is the best kept secret of anything I've ever seen for somebody running for office.
So he won't be able to count ballots or hand out ballots or have anything to do with the ballots.
Oh, I see.
And not show up, right? Not show
Well,
up.
that, I didn't read the statutes that way, but
So you can't even show up?
yes, he
Is
can.
that
No,
right?
no, I can't, not.
Yes, he can.
I see.
He just pulling you.
What is it you're running for?
Dog catcher.
You won't make it.
So you're there from 7 a.m. to noon?
Yes, 7 to noon. I can go longer than that, but
Mr. Bugby, you're there from like
When can you do it, Joe? Can you do it?
What day is this?
September 11th?
Yeah, it's a Tuesday.
it's my birthday. Bring something.
I can't be there before, I'll get out at 5:30.
All right, I'll do the 12th till whenever he gets in.
Okay, all
I'll
right.
take the late shift.
Yeah, I'm sure those come in handy sometimes.
Did somebody bring some old ice cream once?
I don't know, that cake that we had picked
That cake's gone.
It was frozen through that river.
6 hours and 1 hour.
Okay, so we've got that cleared away.
Yep, and then the last thing is you may recall, I think it was at the last meeting, we talked about the survey and lot line adjustment that was performed for the church property, and there's the little parcel A off to the
Yes.
left-hand side of the town hall, and
We were gonna acquire title that.
and the attorney has come back to me and given an estimate of about $3,000 to go through the quiet title process, and that's assuming that nobody contests it. So my recommendation would be that we hold off and find out from the architects exactly how important parcel A is to the whole project.
I agree. I'd like to clear it up, but not for 3,000 right yet.
Okay. And that's all I have.
So we're on 11 now.
Yep.
Motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's only like a few signatures.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion? More discussion? Aye. What do you think? 2.5 inches. No, it's 2.5 inches.
Wait a minute, are you telling me that some?
I'm really staying out of it.
Oh,
I wasn't one of the people wearing it.
Public comment.
my battery is going low. Battery is going low. Battery is going low.
Yeah.
I got promoted again.
Yeah, that's okay.
Darn.
We don't mind.
So are you gonna put out any signs, Scott?
No, you said I couldn't get elected as dog catcher, so.
Yeah, you kind of killed this feeling.
What?
Hmm?
What do they whispering about over there?
Well, quiet all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's because they got caught.
Some kind of collusion going on over there. Collusion?
Are we required to attend the lot line adjustment?
No. I was gonna
Can
speak.
we?
You can, sure.
Sure.
John and I were gonna be there, but you're absolutely welcome to. It's the September 13th meeting.
I was just gonna see the process.
Sure.
Well, we've got any new updates on anything you told us from the last time? Any new projects, any new developments? Oh, can I ask a very pointed question?
Mhm.
I'm not gonna mention any names, but last year at the fair, there was a certain vendor who sells smoked items, and the service was very slow. He is not back again, is he?
There were a lot of complaints about that.
He has said he's coming back and has gotten rid of that individual. Is no
So
longer an
we
employee.
will not get any more delays. So
You're waiting forever to get
for
food.
some reason, food service comes under Board of Selectmen duties, I guess.
Oh,
Because
really?
they all came and complained.
Oh, you aren't the only one. I don't know, the fair is selling food this year as well, hamburgers and hot dogs.
Oh.
So there'll be more of a choice this year, so if you choose to wait in that line,
Okay.
it will be your choice.
So Boy Scouts aren't doing it this year?
They're doing sausage subs
Oh,
and meatball subs. So what we try to do is not to have anybody sell the same thing.
is Larry back?
There is back.
Yes.
Yep. But he did say he wants to come back, and he did say, the chief spoke with him, and that employee no longer works for
Okay.
him.
Yeah, I don't know what the issue was, but it was just too long.
These all done? Yeah.
And our fireworks are how long this year?
20 minutes.
So we got harvest supper,
Yeah.
then we're.
Ice cream, harvest supper, ice cream social,
Oh, we're having ice cream again?
mhm,
Jeez.
bonfire, fireworks.
Has the fair committee notified the local animal owners that there's gonna be a lot of explosions? No?
Did you meet
So,
I'm confused.
I don't know.
I might.
Typically, like the barn owners in the area. I mean, I suppose it's with advertised fireworks.
Okay.
Do you think we should do like a mailing or something? Is that what
No,
you're thinking?
I'm just thinking if you put the grapevine out there, that make sure people know, because you know who they are. They have animals. Just make sure that they're aware that between 9 and
They should do
9:30, that
Right,
there's gonna be some explosions.
I should do that.
Like
Thank
the
you.
Rossi family, because they have lots of animals.
They have lots of problems.
We do.
Yeah, so-
And Laura Gunn knows because she's on the fair committee, and Kelly, I'll make sure I tell Kelly Perkins because she's close.
But the last time we did it, there was a lady that had some horses or something.
They went nuts.
Yeah, we heard about, I don't remember her name.
I don't either. I don't remember hearing about this.
I don't remember her name.
Do you remember where she lives?
No, I just remember that she complained that her horses were disturbed and she would have liked to have known beforehand. So I don't know.
Well, I'll send an email out to the horse stables
Okay.
in town.
It wasn't the grumblings. I'm pretty sure it wasn't that.
No, because she knew she was at the fireworks.
So,
Maybe it was Kelly on Cartland Road or Jocelyn down on Mast Road.
I don't remember who it was. It was just, all I remember was the lady and she was complaining because she would like to know beforehand so she could deal with the issue with her horses because
Okay.
they freaked out.
Yeah, horses don't like fireworks.
Okay.
Did you
And speaking
update
of
us on Bedrock Gardens, where we are?
Bedrock Gardens went to the zoning board last Wednesday night for added number of events. And they amended their application at the meeting, so it was continued till September 12th for both sides to gather more information. And then they're going back before the planning board on this Thursday night to continue the site review process, but they've been asked to do a traffic study and to work out some agreements with the butters, which as of yesterday have not been worked out on screening. So that's ongoing. Expensive.
What's the chance of them getting done by the end of the year?
I don't think they'll get approval before October, because the traffic study hasn't even started yet, and they're using the September open house to work on the traffic study. So I don't think it'll be until October. They sold the first house
Oh,
on the Cheney subdivision.
oh,
Really?
Mm-hmm.
is this the $459,000 one that looks like it's?
That's a
mini house?
that's a
That's what I
facsimile.
figured. It didn't look like, just looked
No.
very small.
Yeah, you don't
Any
get a
update?
lot for your money anymore.
No. Any update on the water line?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay.
I got an email and she was supposed to reach out to us and
Nothing.
meet with us and
Hmm.
hasn't happened yet.
But I wanted to clarify too that the picnic tables, I will paint them, but I don't think I'll get them done for the fair.
Okay.
That's
Well,
next Saturday.
my concern is.
Oh,
longer the
preserving
archives.
them. Oh, absolutely, absolutely, but I just wanted to clarify that I won't have them done by next Saturday.
Will you stain them with your tiara on or not?
My husband will be painting them, only he doesn't know it yet.
Oh, will he be wearing the tiara then?
My husband is far from the tiara type.
There's a picture of that.
Can you see them?
Where are
Motion to
we?
adjourn?
Is that where we are, Mr. Chair?
Unless it's other business.
I think we're done. Anything else? I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.